So as you can tell by the title, this is going to be my coming out story, if you can call it that anyway, but we'll get into that in a minute. So let's start right at the start. When I knew that I was gay, I was roughly, I'd say about 7. I know it was around about 7. It's around about the 7, 8 mark. The reason how I knew this was just, I was a boy. I had guy friends. We didn't have like smartphones like we did today though. So anything that was sent around to anyone that's listening that wasn't born in the 90s, this is probably going to sound so alien, but everything was sent around via Bluetooth. And yeah, that's how we got our videos and stuff. We didn't have the internet like on our phones or anything like we did back then. So everything was sent through Bluetooth. And yeah, that's pretty much how I know. I'm not going to go too much into it. I'm not going to make it all gross and stuff. But yeah, I was a guy. I had things sent to me, and I was like looking at it, and I was like, I don't like that. And then I can remember in like the little group thing that we had, there was a video that came through, and it was with a guy and a girl. And I can remember then I was like, oh, okay. And I can remember fixating just on the man. And that didn't bother me. I had no problem with it at the start. I had no problem with the fact that I was gay, or coming to terms with it in my head anyway at the start. And yeah, so that's pretty much how I knew at a young age that I was gay. Fast forward then to when I lived in a small town. Let's just say this first, because I know that when I say this to some people, they're like, that's really weird. Like, you shouldn't be doing things at that age or whatever. I don't know if it's a small town thing, but everyone around in my area started experimenting very, very young. So as this experimenting thing started going on, I obviously was trying it because I was like, I don't know. And I thought some girls were cute, but I liked them as friends. I didn't like them in a sexual way or anything at all. And I had a couple of girlfriends, and I was just like, we were just like holding hands and like we were kids at the end of the day. But when I got to the level where everyone was like starting to mess around with each other and stuff, I was just really not interested in it. So I can remember having like my last girlfriend, and I was like, she was such a sweetheart that I knew in my head that I was gay, but I hadn't come to terms with it. I hadn't like accepted it, proper accepted it myself yet. So I can remember I was like, I love you so much, but I'm not in love with you because we're not compatible in that type of way. That's where, because everyone else was experimenting with people, and I'd already tried to experiment with a girl, and I was like, it's not my thing, so like, let's try and fucking experiment with a guy. And it's exactly what I did. And because I was just like, didn't care about it, like one bit at all, it didn't bother me or anything, I confided in a friend, and we were in around about year 6, so it was about 9, 10, and I confided in a friend about this. And he ended up telling the whole school, and it went round like wildfire. So we had phones, we could text, like it's just we didn't have Facebook or anything, but yeah, everyone knew about it. And at the time I had a girlfriend, which was very, very awkward. But then this is where I then had the label Gay Jack. If you're wondering why the label Gay Jack, my birth name was Jack. I changed my name by default to Diago. Different story in itself for a very, very different type of video. But yeah, just to keep it sweet and short, I used to have the label as Gay Jack. I hated it. I didn't understand it either. I was just like, what the fuck? Like, who cares? Everyone's messing around with girls. Why can't I mess around with a guy? And it didn't bother me really at the start, but it did later down the line. And all my friends that I was hanging around, my little clique that I had going on, because I was very much like in the middle. So I had my friends that I grew up with, and I kind of hang around like the popular people at the same time. As soon as this all come around, they deaded me, and they were just like, nah, kicked him to the curb, and they just turned on me. Everyone that I had been friends with on like that side anyway, the popular group we call them, they just kind of outcasted me, and they made my life a misery for the rest of my whole entire school life, not just primary school, comprehensive school. They brought it all through all the stuff that I left primary school with, because obviously I was around about 9, 10 when this happened. It was like coming towards the end. I think I was in year 6. So when I went to high school, or comp as we called it, then they started their rumours all over again, and I had to deal with it all over again in comp. At this point, I was a typical, like, becoming into a teenager. So my mental health, anyone's mental health at that age is completely fucked anyway. But to then have this constant nag thing, this just constant bullying following you around just because of something that you have no control over, that was what tipped me over to the edge then. And then my mental health just deteriorated. And then I was put on all these tablets, and that's where I started suppressing everything that I felt. And I even went as far to watch straight porn and just try and fix it on the man, so nothing would be on my Google search or anything. It really tricked a part of my brain, because of the way that I was being treated. I was like, this is not accepted. And it wasn't. At that point, it was not. Where I grew up, it was not accepted. The older generation didn't like it, the younger generation didn't like it. The younger generation just follow what their parents say. So with me growing up, and this is why, like, now when I think back on it, I'm so easy to, when it comes to forgive, I'll never forget any of it, but I can understand it, because growing up in my household, my dad always said to me and my 2 other brothers, if any of us ever come out gay, we wouldn't be accepted under the roof, word for word. Obviously, my dad does not think like that anymore, but my dad come from a very, very different generation as well. There was no one. There was loads of gays, but nobody ever talked about it. It wasn't accepted, and nobody kind of expressed themselves and tried to make it a acceptable thing, I guess. They just kind of come to terms with the fact that people didn't like it, and people just hid it, and they were very good at hiding it. We did it for years, so that is where I can understand where people were cruel growing up, because they were kind of just taught that through their parents, and you either do as your parents taught you, or you learn and then you grow. And today my dad, because I really don't want to like throw shade on my dad here, because he loves my partner, they drink together and stuff. Like, the first thing he said to my partner when he walked into the house, he was like, do you want a can, bud? Like, typical Valley thing to say. But I think it doesn't help the area that I grew up as well. Like, he came out of 13, 14, where I come out at 19. That's where I had enough, and I knew that I was gay at 7. I kind of come to terms with it in my own head at like 10. Everyone kind of like suppressed it and just was like, that's fucking wrong, you can't do that, blah 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 blah. And then I just kind of went in myself, and that happened all the way up until 19. This is where leads me to around about the 14 gap. This is where, when I got up into comp, and I started making a couple of different new friends. The friends group that I had made weren't probably the best. I guess we were like the outcasts. I loved it. All of my friends back in the day, even though some of them shit on me, but like, I probably did just as bad to them, so it doesn't matter. But we had like a really good, tight little community, but I still didn't feel accepted enough to tell any of them. I didn't tell any of my friends from school. None of them. I never had the opportunity to actually come out to any of my friends in school. We went through all of comp together, I hid it. I was self-harming. I was taking shitloads of drugs. Valium, to be honest. So I was self-harming and taking a load of Valium. That started at the age of like, the self-harm started roughly around about 11. The drugs started about 14, 15. And I think the drugs played, and the mental health played a massive part on the way that I was treated growing up. Because I was never that type of person, and I'm very, very like, still to this day a little bit like insecure about stupid things, just like my body and stuff. And like, I just look at myself, and what I see in the mirror isn't what other people see of me. And I think that is something that happened to me growing up because of the stuff that people were projecting onto me, and just the constant bullying. I couldn't deal with it. It just made, I was such a bubbly person. I went to a naughty school. I weren't like the average like shelled insecure person. I went to like a naughty school from all of primary school. When I went to comprehensive, then everything changed, because what was happening in primary followed me then to comprehensive, and I just had enough at that point. I had no friends for 2 years in comp. I didn't have anyone. All I used to do was sit in the art class and just draw. I was always on my own, and then that's where I made my little group of friends a couple of years later. And we were a good team, the whole group and stuff, but because of the way that I was treated through primary and the 2 years I was in comp, because I had a group of friends, I felt if I had told any of them, I was obviously going to get the same responses as pretty much as what happened to me in primary school. So that's why I suppressed it. And then I just went off the bandwagon, and I was taking drugs from 14 up until 22. So then fast forward into 19. When I got to 19, oh, this part's quite cringy. So I still had some of my friends. Most of my friends had gone. I was just too bad on drugs at that point, and I don't blame them. I was not a stable person to be around, and yeah, I just didn't have a very good energy around. Well, I had quite a very good energy around me, but for all the wrong reasons. And I made friends with one of my best friends at the time, Brogan, her name was, and yeah, we'd been hanging out for about 6 months, 4 to 6 months. And I can remember we went to a nightclub together, and we would always end up back at hers, and we would always end up partying back at hers and stuff and whatever. And I can't remember 100% because I was like so fucked on drugs, and I was like really messed up on K. But she tried to like kiss me, and this is how I remember anyway. So she tried to like kiss me, and I like kind of pushed back. I was like, no. And she was like, what? What's wrong? Like, is it me? Like, what am I doing? And then I just burst out into tears, because I was just like, this is like my only opportunity now that I can tell someone that, yeah, I'm very good friends with, but I haven't been friends with them for like most of my life. That if she had left, yeah, it would have hurt. Like, don't get me wrong, it would have hurt, but it wouldn't have been as catastrophic as if I lost a friend of like 10 years, say. You know, that this is where my brain was working. So I can remember sitting there, and I just started bursting out crying. And then I just told her, and then we were both crying. I don't know how this ended up happening though. We were both crying, and her mother was in the other room and obviously heard us. She knew that we used to go out drinking, and she'd let us like come back, and just as long as we were quiet, it didn't really matter. And then she ended up coming into the room, and all I can remember then is me, Brogan, and her mum were all on the bed singing Punk Rock Girl. That's all I can remember in my head. Like, and she was honestly so fucking great. Like, we don't really speak anymore, just through different things. When I was like going through recovery and stuff, I just needed that time on myself and everything, and I just chose to just cut everyone off, and that's what I said probably wasn't the healthiest thing to do in one of my last videos, but I was definitely necessary. But she is what showed me what a true friend could be. She obviously knew about it, and from my past experience with people knowing things like that, I thought that it was going to be spread around like wildfire. So I kind of prepared myself for it mentally. And at this point, I had quite a big friends group. And she didn't. She didn't tell anyone. And then it came to a point where I ended up telling a couple more people, because I'd already said it at that point. I was like, at that point is where, so 19 is where I come to terms mentally in my head that I was gay. And it took about 2-3 months, and then I started telling little bits and people. I never did this whole like thing on social media where I made like a massive post or anything. I know like a lot of people did that. I didn't do that, never did that. So there's still some people that I went to school with that probably think that I'm straight. I just didn't feel the need to do that. I weren't something that I felt necessary. It was just I would tell the people that I cared about, and they would work from there. So I come out at 19, we'll say that, but I had to come out twice. So this is what I meant by like, if you can call it coming out. Oh my god, this one's cringy as well. But so my family, this is the family come out now, and this. So, my mother kind of had an idea, I think, because she did ask me once when I was younger. There was like a problem where the school had found out that I was self-harming, and there was rumours going around, the gay Jack thing. And yeah, they kind of like explained this to my mother, so my mother kind of asked me, and I was just like, point blank, no, cut it dead. I deaded it straight away. I was like, I don't want this conversation, no. I was going through way too much at that point. That was a conversation that I probably should have had at like 10 or 11. At the age, I think I was around about like 15, 16. I was a stroppy teenager, going through mental health problems and going through a drug problem at the same time. I was not going to be honest with my parents at that point. So she did ask. So I think she had some sort of like inkling. But it got to the stage of we had Sky downstairs, and it was like the new Sky Q, I think it was, or something at the time, and they had like the YouTube app thing on it. So I used to sign into my YouTube, and I used to listen to music in the living room and stuff. And one time I just found myself on the other side of YouTube, and I was looking at like my coming out stories, all of this, yada yada yada. Next thing you know, all I can hear is my mother being like, "Come down here, why is there gay porn on my TV?" I was like, what? So I goes down and I looked at it, and I was like, that is not what you think it is. It's YouTube. And she was like, well, what? Is this something that you need to tell me? And I was just like, nope. I kind of like ran back upstairs, and I was like, shut the door. I was like, oh my fucking god. Oh my fucking god. Because I always said that I was not going to tell my family. I didn't have any intentions to. I didn't know how my dad would perceive it. I didn't know. I knew my mother would be devastated because she wouldn't have grandchildren from me. And I just couldn't be bothered to have the. I don't know, I think it was just the mental trauma as well from growing up and having everyone turn on me, that I thought my family and I thought all my friends were going to do the same thing to me, where it was the complete opposite. Me and my dad never had this. So me and my mother, eventually I goes down and I say to her, I was like, yeah, okay, this is what it is. And she asked me, and I could see that she looked deviled in her face, but she was like, I love you and I'll accept you for whatever it is. Don't worry about daddy, I'll speak to daddy. I was like, okay. So my mother spoke to my dad. My dad didn't really speak to me for about a week or two. I don't think that it was like malicious. I just think that he was so dumbfounded and didn't know what to say. I don't think he was being malicious or anything. I think it was just that he didn't know what to say. I think he was just like, how do I approach the situation? And like, my dad's in his, like, coming up 60 now, so he's that generation. They're more of the generation, they're like, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. You don't talk about your feelings. Oh my God, just put it in the back of your head and just leave it there. That's the type of person that my dad is. But now he's learned to accept. He loves my partner. And yeah, we've just, the family, like, my parents come up here, we have like meals up here, we go to my parents, we have meals there. Like, we spend Christmas now together, we spend all the holidays together. It's a very nice little thing that we got going on. And it's just something that I never thought would happen. And yeah, it's just, it's beautiful where I come to, but it was messy to get to where I am. I just want to touch on a couple of little bullet points. I've made some bullet points and I just want to touch on these. I'm not going to go too in depth, except from maybe the last two. But yeah, why it took me so long to come out. Personally, the reason why is because I just felt at a young age very strongly that it wasn't accepted and it wasn't the normal thing. So that is the reason why it took me so long to come out. What coming out taught me about myself? It taught me to be kind. That's what it taught me, because I don't think it was necessarily the coming out thing. It was all of the stuff that happened to me to then get me to where I got to the stage where I come out. I think it made me a very compassionate person. And I think it made me a very sensitive person, but I think that's like a pro and a con. I think that sometimes that can be perceived as weak, but I think it's like one of my strongest parts of me, really. I think it's a nice thing to be almost like vulnerable and sensitive and being able to like connect with people on that level. So as much as what I hated growing up, I probably wouldn't change a lot of it because it made me become a better version of myself. Coming out, battling addiction and mental health. I think it made me realize a lot of things. I think it made me realize that, so I come out to my parents at 21, as I said. So like this is when I proper come out now. And I said to you guys that I started trying to get clean at 22, way many videos ago. So I think what it taught me was that I used drugs to suppress the mental health that I had grown up, the trauma that I had growing up with things, and I used drugs to cope with that and to try and mask the fact that I weren't comfortable in my own skin. So that's pretty much what it taught me, is as soon as I come out, my addiction went away. Like, not straight away. It doesn't just happen like that. As you know from the past videos, I was fighting for about 4 years just to get over 30 days clean. 4 years of accepting myself, but trying to beat the addiction side of things was way different thing in itself. But it taught me that I was using that because of the stuff that happened to me as a child, I guess, and just the bullying and the trauma that I went through. Coming out in a small town. As I touched on before, I think coming out in a small town is going to be way different than coming out in like a city, because things are just, in the city, things are a bit more fresh. Everything's a bit more tight. They get things quicker. There's way more versatility there. There's a bit more of a culture thing there. And I think in a small town, people are stuck in their ways. And I think that didn't help me with my coming out story anyway. It was definitely not fun, but like I said, there's certain things that I would change through my life, but I don't know. I think I would have preferred coming out in the city, I think I would have preferred just living in a city in general, but yeah, I just wasn't the cards that I was given. How the LGBT community helped me through my journey. They didn't. They didn't. And this is primarily why I wanted to make this video. Because I think everyone has this like, I 100% support the LGBT community. I think that is very, very important. But I think as time has gone on, I think people have kind of lost their way a little bit with things. And yeah, my personal experience with it though wasn't very great. I obviously went through what I went through growing up. I wasn't accepted by many different crowds. As soon as people had labelled me with the name Gay Jack, I was too gay to hang around the popular people. And then when I got into the community and realised what the community was, I realised that I was classed as too straight acting, which I didn't even know was a thing. Because I'm being called gay all my life, and then in the gay community I've been called straight acting. And I'm just, I don't know, it was a weird one. Especially, I think with me, I'm talking from my personal experience because of the area that I grew up. I think if I was brought up in a city or anywhere like San Francisco or whatever, I think it would have been a completely different ballgame. Round here, there was no gay bars growing up. There is one gay bar now and it's just closed down. So there's no gay bars anymore around this area that I'm in anymore. But the community itself, I found it very seedy. I was kind of like the fresh new kid on the block, and yeah, it just wasn't a very good experience pretty much for myself. I personally didn't find much of a community, but I think it plays a massive role of where I am based personally. So I don't want to completely be like, the LGBT community is shit, I had nothing from them. I'm just talking about my personal experience because of where I am and where I grew up. I did go to Cardiff a few times. I did not like that scene. I went to Manchester and that scene was even worse. I kind of just gravitated towards festival friends and meeting cool people rather than going down the route of finding acceptance in a gay club, because I didn't find any. And last but not least, advice that I would give to my younger self and what I would do different. Advice, I would honestly just say, don't care what people think and just own. If I could have the same mentality now that I had in like primary school in the beginning of comp, that would have been perfect, but that's not an ideal world. I think the advice that I would have liked to have given the younger self is not to care what other people think. Just do you. People will love you for you, and people will hate you for you. That's just how it is, and you've got to focus on the good things in life that you have rather than focusing on all the negative things, because there's a lot more good things you have than negative. It's just the negative ones kind of like put a massive cloud over you and they make you think about them. Like, you have a loving family, you have all of these good qualities about yourself and stuff. Don't let anyone try and take away your shine. And what I would do different, honestly, nothing. I wouldn't do anything different. I think the way that I handled things, obviously with the drugs and the self-harming and stuff like that, I think that there's a lot of me that regrets making certain choices, but I wouldn't change them, because if I was to change them, then I wouldn't be the person who I am today. And I think the qualities that I have from being a kind-hearted person and just a nice person in general is because of the things that I've gone through. So I wouldn't change anything. I would just give advice more than anything. That's my very brief coming out story. There's a lot more things that happened in between, but I don't want this video to be like the other videos that I've been doing. I want this one to be like a completely separate one. I needed to touch on the drugs because that is the reason why I started taking drugs. It was because I wasn't secure, I weren't happy, and I just didn't feel loved in many different aspects, but I didn't want it to be whole based on that. So I tried to keep it brief. That's pretty much my coming out story. And now I have a beautiful partner. We've been together just over 2 years now. We have 2 cats and a dog. We have a little family thing going on and stuff. But I just want people to know that even when you're in like the darkest place of your life, that you think, I'm never going to tell my family, I'm never going to be accepted by people, I'm never going to do this, and this. That's exactly what I thought. And look at where I am now. Like, not saying I have the best life in the world. By far I don't. We struggle. We struggle to put food on the table. We work, we do all these things, but we struggle. But I would take struggling with him over the past, the way that I was struggling then, any day. And I just love how far I've come in my own journey. And I love that when I see people, that they always compliment that about me, and they say that like it could have made you or break you type of thing. And I'm just grateful for life at this point. I'm happy to be where I am today, and I never thought that was possible. So if I thought that, if this video can potentially push someone to becoming a bit more accepting in their self, because as I can say, trust me, I've been there. If you carry it on for as long as I did, 10 years, some people do it a lot longer than that, you're going to end up having problems that will never go away. Like, there's certain parts of me, mental health wise, that will never go away. There's like the way that I look at myself, the way I look at myself in the mirror is not what I see isn't what other people see. And that is purely based on because I went in on myself and I was in the closet for such a long time and in such self-denial that I ended up hating myself, and I learned to hate myself. So if I can put this video out expressing that and saying that the quicker that you come out or come to terms with it yourself mentally before even telling your parents or anything first, just the easier life is going to be in general. Things will just start falling into place. Like, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I'm not going to ramble too much on about it, but I feel like that everyone talks about the positive things where it comes to like coming out and stuff, where with me there's a lot of positive things. Now I have beautiful family and stuff, but as I was like getting to this stage, it wasn't all sunflower and roses. There were some dark points, and then you've got to go through the dark parts of life to get to the good point. If any of you are honestly just really struggling with the idea with coming out and all of these things, type in the comment box anything, reach out to me. My Facebook is linked, my Instagram is linked. Mostly I use Facebook now, but reach out to me on any of them, and if I can try and support you in any sort of way, of course that I will. And that is it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and remember, this is a peaceful place. This is a nice peaceful channel. We're not going to be leaving any negative comments. I know there's going to be 1 or 2 probably down there, but I'm not going to entertain it. I'm not going to reply to them. So just remember, guys, you were loved, and I will see you next week.